seemingly. But now God has pulled us inside of the family of God, co-heirs, adopted as one of his own. I want to encourage you this morning, church. That's who you are. Adopted into the family of God. Co-heirs with him. Jesus said one thing, you know what I have, I'm going to give you too. What thing would you hold back from your own kids? I don't know of anything. In the same way, God has held nothing back to us. You know, I want to close in this. Isaiah 53, Charles Spurgeon, calls this the Bible in miniature. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He paid the price for what we have done wrong. He was bruised for our iniquities. What's our iniquities? It was our rebellion against God. All the times we said no to him. You know, are you away from God this morning? Him being wounded is the remedy for our problem. Salvation was a free gift from God. Given to us undeserved, unearned, unmerited. I want to close this one illustration. A wealthy man hired a poor man. He was a homeless man, and he had nothing. So he took him on to do some work inside of his garden. And at the end of the day, the wealthy man would give him a check for $50. And so some time went on for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And every day, he experienced that check was there for $50. No questions asked. And then one day, maybe 2 weeks later, as he's working the man's garden, he accidentally pulled up some very expensive flowers, which he thought were weeds. At the end of that day, he received $100. And that went on for some time. And after a while, the man began to open up a bank account, and he put all that money away. And after 6 months, as he worked for the wealthy man, he began finding $200 at the end of the day. But what perplexed him the most suddenly and nothing surprised him more, but at the end of his 1-year anniversary, he found $1,000. And he was so excited. He went to go show it to a friend. And they never seen a check for $1,000. It was so big, it was so hard to believe. Was it real? So his friend asked, is it real? How do you know it's even good? It just seems too good to be true. And the man's response was this: my employer is very wealthy, and he is a good and honest man. I have received over 300 checks from him, and he was good on every one. And I know this check will be no different. You know, God wrote to us a promise note, about 300 of them, about the coming of his son. And none of them bounced. All of them were good. And as we close, do you know the references to the second coming? Outnumber the first about 8-1. $1,845, some scholars have found. And it said that 1 out of every 30 verses in the New Testament speaks of his return. And in closing this morning, Satan had convinced the first humans to trust themselves rather than God and his wisdom. And that broke fellowship with them. I want to encourage you this morning that Jesus bridged the gap for us, that we might come back in communion with him. You know, when I came to know him, the very first words I said was, I can't believe this is what I was missing. Don't miss it. Don't miss all that God has for you. You know, with every head bowed and every eye closed this morning, maybe you've come in this building, if you never received him. You know what God says? Jesus spoke these words that I'm standing here, I'm knocking at your door. Please let me in. Don't turn him away this morning, people. If you've never received him, I want to pray with you. He's interested in you, in case you didn't know. He's made a way back to him if you've been separated from him, to adopt you back into his family. Would you say yes to him this morning? I won't embarrass you, but I want to pray with you. Say this simple prayer, and if you mean it from your heart, God says he'll come into your life and give you a new beginning. If that's you that God's speaking to, pray with me. Jesus, forgive me. I've rebelled against you. I've sinned against you. I've ran away from you. But I want to come back home. I want to come back home into your arms. I surrender to you and humble myself before you and want to turn away from my sin. I receive you this morning. Come into my heart and take over my life. I give you my past. I give you my present. And Lord, I commit my future into your hands, I pray. Amen.